Afternoon, everybody, and welcome. My name is Ola Lassard. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Hemp Fusion, and I'm the President of the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, which is the hemp industry's leading national business advocacy organization. I will say that I know I speak on behalf of everyone in our organization when I say how thankful I am that so many of you have chosen to join us today. We have what we hope is a really informative panel discussion, and we're excited to bring you along on this journey with us. So as many of you know, hemp has a really long history in the United States, going back to some of the earliest days as our nation. And unfortunately, the early history of hemp was largely beneficial to a very small group of people. It was primarily white men. And the industry was largely built on the backs of people of color with little benefit to those communities. Today, hemp is facing a resurgence. And as the hemp industry's national business advocacy organization, the Hemp Roundtable is dedicated to ensuring that as we move further into this resurgence, we bring everybody along and that there are benefits available to everybody. It was with some of the growing awareness of this, of the inequities and the systemic racism within society and within our industry, and with the wise counsel of the Minority Cannabis Business Association this past year, that we as an organization formed a Minority Empowerment Committee. Our mission is to create an equitable and impactful hemp industry. We're committed to embracing the full spectrum of humanity, regardless of what we look like, where we come from, and whom we love. And we hope to promote economic empowerment with communities of color, minority-owned enterprises, and establish and adopt metrics and timetables for our member companies. We're advancing policy and legislative reform, promoting mentorship, and generating new business opportunities across all communities. We genuinely believe that inclusion and diversity will make this industry stronger. And this initial webinar today is a really important piece of that for us. So at this time, I want to just thank our event advocacy partners for amplifying this message and this webinar opportunity, and to ensure that the entire industry has access to this webinar. And those partners are the American Herbal Products Association, Friends of Hemp, the Hemp Industries Association, the Midwest Hemp Council, the National Cannabis Industry Association, the U.S. Hemp Authority, the U.S. Hemp Building Association, the U.S. Hemp Growers Association, the United Natural Products Association. And I'd especially like to introduce and thank our moderator, Amber Littlejohn, who is the Executive Director of the Minority Cannabis Business Association, which is our partner organization for this event. So thank you all for coming, and I will let Amber take it from here. Thanks, Amber.
Thank you, Ola, and thank you to the entire U.S. Hemp Authority for your work on this issue and your truly genuine commitment to seeing this work done, not just to making statements or doing PR work, but to actually looking for ways to support and empower minorities in the hemp space. As Ola mentioned, my name is Amber Littlejohn, Executive Director of the Minority Cannabis Business Association. We are the largest national trade association representing minority cannabis businesses and our communities. While we are known primarily for the THC side of cannabis, we have a substantial number of members in the hemp and CBD space. To any of our members that are here today, I want to extend a special welcome to you and say that I am extraordinarily happy to be here today in service to you. In addition to my role as Executive Director of MCBA, I sit on the Board of Directors of the U.S. Hemp Authority. And as Ola mentioned, I have been working with the U.S. Hemp Roundtable to create the Minority Empowerment Committee. The committee truly grew out of, as I mentioned, a really genuine commitment to do the work and see the change. And so through this journey of exploration and understanding that we have done together, and better understanding the barriers and challenges facing minority hemp entrepreneurs, we have discovered that these challenges and barriers are truly universal to small businesses. The lack of access to foundational knowledge is far too common and often provides a truly insurmountable barrier. So again, I am honored to be here with all of you and our partner organizations who have supported this event today. and it's a joy to gather with you as a community. Far too often we don't have spaces these days in which we gather around a common issue or a common ideal. And here we are gathering today around hemp. So I look forward to this discussion and look forward to hearing your questions and your feedback and to being able to interact with you moving forward. So with that, I want just a little bit of logistics here. If you have questions today, please drop them in the Q&A. There's a little Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or you can just drop them in the chat and we will get to as many of them as possible, either throughout the program or at the end. So with that, I will turn it over to our wonderful panelists to introduce themselves, starting with the lovely Ms. Tonya Lewis.
Amber, thank you so much to MCBA and to the US Hemp Roundtable for putting this discussion on. There's so many people that are going to benefit from this tremendously. I started my hemp journey in 2018 when I went to the Southern Hemp Expo, and what really caught my attention was the lack of diversity in the room. It was just glaring. And I, went there with the purposes of understanding the plant, understanding the use purposes of it beyond just the oil itself. I was actually looking specifically for fiber and any information I could get on fiber. So it's, having forums like this where you can get information as a small business is significant. It's important. I am the Chief Marketing Officer at NuSachi. We're a company based in Nashville, Tennessee. We specialize in custom formulations of hemp extracts and as well as smokable flower. I've been in the industry for a year, a very new company. And so as everybody on this panel can attest to, there's been a lot of changes that have happened even within the past year. And, as a small business, you have to stay up current with all the changes that are happening, and being able to really plug into organizations like MCBA and US Hemp Roundtable is important as we try to grow the industry as well as to support businesses that are in the industry. So I thank you all for having me on this panel today and look forward to the conversation.
Well, hi, everyone. Thanks, Amber, MCBA, and the US Hemp Roundtable for the opportunity to be here. My name is Rend Al-Mondhiry. I'm a partner at the law firm Amin, Talati, Wasserman. I'm in our DC office. And my practice area focuses on advising clients in the dietary supplement, food, over-the-counter medicine, and cosmetic industries on a range of labeling, advertising, and product formulation compliance matters. And in the past few years, my focus has really shifted to helping companies navigate the rapidly changing regulatory landscape for hemp and CBD products, both at the federal and state level, and really helping clients understand how to responsibly develop and market their products. And my background is in the dietary supplement industry. I practiced in this area for almost a decade. And, in terms of diversity, I think it's the natural products industry in general is an area where we've seen a big push for diversity. And I'm pleased to see it there, and I'm pleased to see it in the CBD and hemp products industry as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Marielle Weintraub. I am a founding board member and the current president of the U.S. Hemp Authority. For those of you who may not know much about the U.S. Hemp Authority, it is a certification program for the hemp industry, driven by the hemp industry, to provide high standards, best practices, and self-regulation to increase confidence in consumers and regulators that hemp products can be trusted. I was introduced to the hemp industry in early 2016 and brought the hemp industry's needs for valid and reliable testing to Covance, which was later bought by Eurofins, a very large laboratory group, and continued to drive development of hemp-specific testing and standards until I left to join a hemp company in 2019, where I'm now the Director of Scientific Research and Development. So I am active in many dietary supplement and hemp industry trade associations. I am a board member of the US Hemp Roundtable. I'm on expert review panels and working groups for AOAC's International Cannabis Analytical Science Programs. And I'm also a member of the American Herbal Products Association Cannabis Committee. A little bit about my background is I earned my master's degree and my doctorate in behavioral neuroscience from Texas Christian University, focusing my research on Alzheimer's disease pathology. I am very honored that I was asked to speak here today, and I look forward to great conversations with all of these panelists.
Yes, Ron Conyea here. I'm a farmer in Kentucky, a hemp farmer, and I'm grateful to be able to serve on this panel today. What we're talking about here is opportunity. There's two kind of farmers in our country: those that came from generational wealth and passed down to them, and those that started from nothing. A little background on myself: I grew up in New York. Newburgh, New York, and certainly wasn't generational wealth. I was in a poverty situation, and then I had an opportunity to come down south and start farming. So, anyways, that's what interests me. I like to help those who don't have opportunities, and hemp is making a comeback, and I want to be here to serve whoever I can to help them get started.
Thank you, Ron. As the folks listening in on this panel can see from the quality and depth of expertise here, you can definitely see why I was so excited to bring this group of people together. And so with that, let's get to some of the questions. And so let's look at some of the basics of industry. The 2018 Farm Bill legalized hemp, but what does that mean? And is it legal for anyone in any state, anywhere, to make or sell grow, sell products containing hemp or CBD? I am going to, how about Rend?
Sure. Yeah, I'll let some of the other panelists discuss the legalities of growing hemp, because that is regulated as well. And just to focus on hemp products, I think this is a great starting question, because I think there was, at least initially, and still to some extent today, some misunderstanding about what the 2018 Farm Bill did in terms of legalizing hemp products. And so what it did was it did remove products that meet the definition of hemp from the Controlled Substances Act. But what the Farm Bill also did was explicitly preserve FDA's ability to regulate hemp products and CBD products under its jurisdiction, including dietary supplements, food, beverages, and cosmetics like lotions, creams, and bath products. And FDA's current position is that CBD and CBT containing ingredients cannot be marketed as a dietary supplement or added to food, because it was studied and then approved as a drug. And FDA has also raised some concerns about some safety gaps in terms of the research that's out there showing that CBD can be safely used in these products. Their research is ongoing. We've been getting a lot of updates from FDA along the way over the past couple of years, and we expect a lot more into next year and the years to come. But despite FDA's position, I mean, there's a lot of gray areas around it, including a lot of industry disagreement around FDA's position, and I think relatively low enforcement against these products, which is why we see so many CBD food and dietary supplement products on the market despite this position. I think that's one question I get all the time. If these products are technically illegal, why do we see so many of them? And I think, again, it's mainly because FDA's position isn't really black and white. And as a lawyer, we have a great time with this. So I think that's the reason why we are where we are today. And I also want to mention that FDA's position does not apply to cosmetics like lotion and things of that nature. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the requirements around those types of products later. So I won't get into detail about that. And then finally, I just want to mention that despite the Farm Bill's legalization of these products, the Farm Bill also preserved states' authorities to regulate these products. So individual states, may have their own sets of rules and guidelines for what's considered a legal product, and it's important to be aware of those individual requirements as well.
Over the last few years, what I've noticed in this industry is that, and it can be very, very frustrating, but it depends what you're selling, where you're selling it, if you're crossing state lines, which state you're in, which county you're in. And so really understanding the different rules and regulations that affect you specifically, your business specifically, is really the only way to get a less than gray answer currently.
Amber, I would like to chime in a little bit on this question.
Please.
I wanted to just mention that as a processor, we work with a lot of different companies, and especially around labeling or how you're packaging your products and how you're marketing them. It does vary state by state. I mean, I've talked to people who have been developing products for beverages in Kentucky, and they move across state lines, and the rules around the way that they label their products are completely different. So for companies that are looking to, grow and be sold in other states, you're going to have to abide by the laws or the rules and the guidelines within those states, or it could cost you a lot of money, because if the regulators come in, or the Department of Agriculture comes in, and they see these products on the shelves and they're not marketed correctly, there could be some repercussions, for brands. So I just want to mention that.
No, I think that's a really important point, because often the gray areas that larger companies can maneuver through with the help of extraordinary legal counsel like Rend, become really, really scary to navigate for small businesses. So I think that's a really important point, Tonya. Moving on, there are, when we talk hemp, there are actually multiple segments of industry and really multiple opportunities. So while I have you, can you just briefly touch on kind of the main opportunities or segments or markets that we have within the hemp space?
I think when we talk about hemp, a lot of people they focus exclusively on the oil itself, but it's a multi-purpose plant. There's a lot of different uses for it. You have everything from fiber. When we talk about, let me back up a little bit. When we talk about industrial hemp, the emphasis is a lot of times on the flower, but there is, fiber that can be used from the stalk material. You can create biofuels. You can create, there's hurd, which is a byproduct of the, fiber stalk that can be used in construction. It's a plant that is, we're just really not even have fully tapped into the potential of this plant and what it's capable of. The infrastructure really just doesn't exist in the United States like it does in a lot of other countries like Canada or China, in Europe in general. So there's a lot of obviously research around these different uses for the plant that need to happen, which requires capital investment. And so, we're just really scratching the surface when we just focus on the oil itself.
Thank you for that, Tonya. Moving on, and this actually one of my very first questions to come in to come in the Q&A is a question that my members have asked me over and over again. So again, if I leave this with nothing but an answer to this question, I feel like my work, like we did good work. So both small growers and manufacturers have shared stories about trouble finding buyers and breaking into the supply chain. So this is a two-part question. What is it about the supply chain that makes it so challenging for small businesses to break in? And B, how can small businesses break in or stand out and compete? And again, as you are first in our speaking order, Tonya, I will turn this over to you first.
Okay. How does one break into when you think about manufacturing, large scale manufacturing, a lot of these major companies already have a well-established supply chain, and it's really hard to, when you're a small producer or a farmer who's trying to get your product into mainstream, production, it's really difficult unless there is an inroads, unless a company is willing to give you that opportunity. It takes a lot of capital to be able to enter an industry like the cannabis space. Just the purchasing the seeds, finding land to grow your product on, finding the labor and the equipment that you need to be able to do it. And as well as moving into the retail space, you've got to have marketing dollars, you've got to have PR, you've got to have, the entry is just, it's huge. And so without having a well-capitalized, well-funded, business, it's a little bit difficult to break into the industry in a way that's allows you to really build your livelihood around it in general. Well-capitalized farms and well-capitalized processors are the ones that are really getting a lot of the larger contracts. So it takes some intentionality from the companies that are the larger manufacturers to say, hey, we're going to be intentional about who we're going to source our materials from. It may mean that people have to, compromise a little bit on their minimum, order quantities, or, just do things that obviously otherwise would not allow people the entry into these spaces. So it's I would say the number one thing would be capital. If I had to say anything was a barrier.
Ron, again, you are somebody with an extraordinary depth of experience farming, and a man that came from humble means to have your success in the space. So I would definitely love your insights on why is it so tough for the small businesses to really make their way to kind of break into the supply chain and find buyers, and what advice would you lend to them in terms of positioning?
Okay, well, I would say there's good news here. The so far in the hemp space, the large or small growers, it really doesn't make any difference. They've experienced quite a bit of pain since 2014 getting into this business, and sometimes, very often, having no market for their hemp. So, and I've experienced that. So. New growers, small grower, minority growers, you're almost blessed that you haven't jumped in head first so far. We've got a ways to go. As far as capital, when hemp, as it continues to grow and processors come into a particular state, a particular region of that state, and then farmers know that they are wanting hemp grown for them, they're going to seek out those farmers, and they'll seek out the smaller ones who want to do a great job, and they're going to be focused on that rather than, maybe their corn or soybeans or wheat. So it's not like time's a wasting, and nobody's really behind here because we're really not churning and going hard yet. So we just need to wait until the industry, till the processors are ready to come out and seek out growers. And then I think if, I'll be one of them that helps the minorities and the especially younger farmers and those that don't have sources of capital. I think the banks and the folks with capital will be seeking them out when the proper time comes.
At the same time, from the brand owner point of view, or they're starting a company, being a distributor, what's really interesting and different about the hemp industry is actually that I think we've seen so many companies show up and new brands started daily, because the barrier to start a brand is not very high. So when it comes to CBD products, when it comes to hemp products, depending on your state, you may even need a license. So there are so many people jumping into this business so quickly that I think what we're going to end up with is we're going to have people who are able to stay in by finding a specific niche and not just creating another Me Too product. I think there's so many products coming in that are identical to the product next to it on the shelf. And I think people are going to start getting bored of that. Those companies are going to start to kind of wane out. And the ones that are going to win are the ones who really intentionally find technology or niches or very specialized products that people want, that people need, and can really differentiate themselves inside what really is a large market at this point.
Thank you. Again, I think that's a really important bit of perspective to kind of hear from that side of industry. Again, another question that came up in the chat that we had planned here. And Ron, I'm going to send this one to you first. If somebody has a small plot of land and they want to grow hemp, what would be your first or your most primary pieces of advice in terms of considerations and really process?
Absolutely. We do that here in Western Kentucky. I'll give you an example. I have 4 acres of strawberries. 4 acres is not a lot of land when you compare it to big row croppers. So I have other friends who grow strawberries, and we share equipment, we share knowledge, and we work together. So, and you could do the same thing. You could have 4 or 5 different farmers that are sharing equipment in their county or their region and just grow a few acres of hemp each. And if they do a great job and it's quality product, they will get contracts in the future, because that's what we're looking at. It's a high value crop, and most farmers look at it as a specialty crop. So yeah, it just you just have to seek out in your community and see who else is interested, and try to get in with other farmers to kind of lessen the blow of that initial cost of inputs.
Thank you, Ron. Any of my other panelists? If not, I think we can move on to, again, one of the key challenges both in hemp and on the THC side of cannabis, and that is some of the financial barriers to entry and participation in this space. And so given the limited access to startup capital, Ron, I'm going to stay with you. Given the limited access to startup capital, what financial advice in terms of getting that startup capital and getting some initial resources, what would be your advice that you would give there?
Well, since this is a fairly new crop, if you look at other crops that have been around for decades and hundreds of years, there are markets, there are backups to that market. There's Chicago Board of you talk about corn, there's the Chicago Board of Trade, and then you don't have to worry about that price. It's set. Hemp is new. You just got to be really careful and start small, and know that your buyer is going to take your product. You don't want to get stuck with a lot of hemp, that's sitting around your shop or your farm and nowhere to go with it. And then, it's time to pay off your operating note or whatever, and you just get in a bind. So just really start small and make sure that you are in a region of the country where processors are looking for growers.
And moving on to our other panelists, Tonya, what would be your advice that you would give in terms of getting that initial access to capital and that startup funding?
I think that a lot of obviously new companies that are entering the space are seeking, venture capital from, to grow their company, to scale their companies. When you're initially seeking capital, obviously you want to have a well-developed plan. If you're going to approach investors, you want to make sure that you have, your who, what, when, wheres, and how you're going to approach the market. What's your market segment? How do you plan to generate revenue? What differentiates you from the other brands? How do you set yourself apart? How do you maintain quality standards? I mean, these are things that are important to investors, and they want to know that you've thought about all these things. It's one thing to just ask for funding. It's like, how do you approach a new industry and produce quality products that people can feel confident about taking? I mean, it's really it's a matter of also just maintaining, the tenacity and the passion for what you're doing, because that is what's going to drive you as well in your business. So I think the initial funding, just in general, is to have a well-developed plan. Make sure that you come fully, ready to put everything on the table, and endure the bumps and bruises that come along with getting involved in a new industry, because investors want to know you're in it for the long haul, and that you're committed.
And Amber, I'll just jump in here. I mean, we work with a lot of investment companies, and a lot of clients come to us when they're ready to be acquired and need to need us to help them understand what they need to do to get there. And so, when investors come to us, they're really looking for us to help them ensure that they're not taking on unnecessary risk. And so that means assessing the regulatory compliance of their brand, their products, and any litigation risks associated with investing in these products. So, that's something for companies to think about. And also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention retailers, because a lot of companies are, looking to be sold by big box retailers, or and while there's some challenges in the supplemented food space still because of FDA's position, even with cosmetic products, retailers are especially, I'm seeing, increasingly concerned about compliance in the CBD and hemp product space, including at the state level. So retailers and investors alike want to see that a company understands the laws and regulations that apply to the product category that they're selling. And even if there's not strict compliance, we've talked a lot about gray areas here. The use of CBD and food supplements is a great example. You still need to be prepared to explain why you think different rules may apply, or why you think your products are outside of the scope of any particular regulation or law, and that you're committed to addressing these types of issues in the future.
If you don't mind me adding as well, what's interesting here is that when people talk about risk and trying to find funding, a lot of times what gets left out, because it's a little different from hemp, or a little different in hemp than other products, is understanding the risk that the plant has itself. So understanding that hemp won't grow on all soil, understanding that the type of land you have, the soil you have, the nutrients you have in the ground, the pesticides and the heavy metals that also might be in the ground or the groundwater matter in this case. And understanding your risks can help you stand out, because people will recognize the fact that you did that work. You understand what can hold you back, but you've also found ways or found people to understand how to overcome that risk as well. And so when it comes to hemp, my advice would be not only to absolutely pay attention to the financial risk, but really understand the crop before you start doing this, because it does come with challenges that aren't normal with other agriculture products.
Amber, Ron again. One other thing in the just a quick example, in the poultry industry, if a person wanted to start in the poultry industry, the loans to get that infrastructure are 100% guaranteed by the government. So maybe that's something in the future that will help folks get resources to capital once hemp gets its foothold a little better, and some guaranteed loans would be possible.
Yes, Ron, I know that MCBA and many of our partner organizations have been busting our tails for years now, trying to make sure that small businesses have access to capital as well. So it is a journey, and we are hoping soon that we get some relief for folks. And so, speaking of relief, I wanted to ask if there are any kind of government grants, nonprofits, any sort of creative and alternative funding opportunities or places that people can go when it comes to funding. Again, Ron, since I have you, do you have any idea about either government programs or other programs that exist that can help out small businesses?
Not directly. However, I've spent the last 2 or 3 years working on the insurance portion of hemp, trying to get, and we have crop insurance in 26 states now for hemp. That helps you get, if you have that, when you try to get money to either for your infrastructure or for operating, it helps when they know that you have crop insurance on it. So, but to say that I know one exact place to go, no, I'm afraid not.
Any of my other panelists? I think one of the folks in the chat had mentioned kind of challenges with the not being recognized as a specialty crop. So is there opportunity in terms of policy shift and changes that people can, that we can advocate for as a community that will potentially open up some government resources? How about Rend?
I'm not aware of any off the top of my head right now. I think part of the challenges is, FDA's position with respect to the use of CBD in food and supplements. We've seen that be a barrier with some federal agencies as well, because, federal agencies listen to each other. And for example, you can't, there's issues of trademarking or getting intellectual property for products that are, CBD containing food or supplements. So, I think as it pertains to at least federal agencies and having grants available that would support, businesses that are selling, finished products, including food and supplements, I think there's some barriers there. And I think once FDA clarifies its position, perhaps that will open up additional opportunities, for grants and things of that nature.
Yeah, thank you, Ren. Sorry for putting you on the spot. Again, in my time working in the herbal product space, there are all of these wonderful programs that exist for small farmers and specialty crop farmers of all sorts that, USDA and the Department of Ag generally provide. So I would encourage all of you to keep a little bit of pressure on your lawmakers and this new administration to honor the industry and the ability to build our economy and build these lands and create equity through hemp, and ask them for recognition and for support for this industry through their programming. Moving on.
Add in one tiny.
Yes, please do.
So what a little known group, although they are very large and carry a very big stick, that was started around the time of the 2014 Farm Bill, is the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research. And if you look to see who they're partnering with and the type of grants they're giving and why those grants are being given, I think hemp has a very good chance of falling in line with their goals due to its ability for sustainability, its ability to help with carbon levels, so on and so forth. And so I think, and most people don't seem to know they exist, which is unfortunate for as big as they are. So I would suggest people look for very specific ag-related foundations, but also reach out to the trade associations and really start leaning on the trade associations for this type of information and to help their members find these grants, because I think that would help all of us along.
Thank you, Marielle. Moving on to a section that I love personally and find fascinating, but a section that really doesn't get the attention often that it's due, because it's not the most sexy and intriguing part of policy, and that's regulation. But I will tell you, in my experience representing multiple organizations that represent small businesses, that the regulatory side can become a really gigantic and insurmountable barrier to entry, and even sustainability. I've seen single enforcement actions and just garden variety enforcement actions run companies over $250,000 and really, really cripple, if not completely shutter the doors of these companies. So I definitely appreciate the insights coming. And so with that, Rend, can you give us a little bit of a 1,000-foot overview of the agencies, if you want to focus on federal, that's fine, the agencies that regulate hemp, and sort of a little bit of where we stand there?
Sure. So, I'll start with USDA. The USDA is, as everyone knows, generally responsible for regulating hemp growth and the plant itself. But once it's out of the ground and being used in products that are sold to consumers, you need to think about other federal agencies and where they come in. And I'll say that, even processors, depending on, what you're going to be doing with that ingredient, that hemp extract, those, I would say that kind of falls into a gray area, and typically I would look to the states for that. But if your ingredient is going to be used in a food, or a dietary supplement, then you absolutely need to think about FDA. And even if it's going to be used in a cosmetic like a lotion, you still need to think about FDA. And I'll just briefly explain some of the differences there, and the different agencies involved with all of these products. But FDA is generally responsible for what you put into the products. In other words, the ingredients, the product formulation, and just as importantly, how it's manufactured, and ensuring that you're making a safe, quality product. And of course, they're also responsible for how these products are labeled and what claims can be made. And the Federal Trade Commission is another important agency. And when Amber, you mentioned having to deal with a single compliance action that can almost bankrupt a company, that's FTC. So they, unlike FDA, they are a law enforcement agency. And the consequences for non-compliance can be much greater, and by that I mean more expensive and more resource intensive. And I think in general, FTC is one we don't talk about enough. And the commission is responsible for ensuring that claims are truthful, accurate, and supported by appropriate evidence. And I say appropriate evidence because it really depends on what type of claim you're making. For example, if you're making a health-related claim, this often means that you need actual scientific evidence, like a human clinical trial, to back your claims. It's really fact-specific and claim dependent. But it is one federal agency to think of when you're developing claims. Another federal agency, if you're making, for example, cleaning products, for household cleaning products, they're hemp-based, you want to think about EPA and what type of requirements may apply there. And other regulators to think about, I think we already mentioned the states and the individual requirements among the states. They've really stepped up their regulation of hemp and CBD products, especially because these products exist in somewhat of a gray area with FDA. And so we're seeing, and Marielle mentioned this, testing, labeling, registration requirements for these products. And in some cases, states are prohibiting ingestible products due to FDA's position on CBD. So it's important to be familiar with these individual laws and what products they apply to before you're selling in them. And one other federal agency to keep in mind, and this is mainly if you're importing hemp ingredients or products, is Customs and Border Protection. And despite the legalization of hemp at the federal level, for whatever reason, Customs hasn't quite gotten the message, especially when it comes to products that contain any amount of THC, even below the federal limit. We've seen clients that have had numerous problems trying to get products, like full spectrum type products, into the US.
Thank you, Rend. My next question is going to be, I'd like to kind of direct to all of you. So either what are the common issues regulators look for, or within your community and your peers, what are the issues that they are facing most when it comes to interaction with regulatory enforcement agencies? So again, just starting from Tonya.
Pardon me, my screen went off. When it comes to regulation on the processing side, as Rend mentioned earlier, we can't, as processors, we can't send products out that are above 0.3%. So just making sure that we maintain the legal levels of THC in any products that we are shipping to a customer or selling to a customer. Not allowing those things to leave our facilities, making sure that labels are, done properly so that they meet the state, regulatory guidelines, and making sure to consult with those agencies before you create a label, because it can cost you a lot of money in the end. But also just like making sure that you work with farmers to maintain good paperwork, like their soil test, and making sure that you ask them for that documentation, because that could come back to haunt you, especially when it comes to processing, because as Marielle mentioned earlier, the soil quality, the water quality, all of that comes out in the hemp product itself, in the extracts. So maintaining good documentation of and record keeping of all of whoever you're doing business with, whether it's a farmer, whether it's another extraction company, always asking for those COAs, making sure that you have full panel testing on all of your product and keeping those documents, you know, and SOPs around the way you're doing processing, so that if ever something happens and it comes into question what you're doing, you always have that documentation to support you. And so at the state level, also just making sure you register your business with the state. You know, don't grow outside of what you've been permitted to grow. That can come back to haunt you as well. So it's just little things that, you know, maybe that people may not think about in terms of the regulatory environment, but everything is important as this industry continues to develop. So, you know, always being informed and up to date on everything that's happening, because the landscape changes so frequently.
Thank you, Tonya.
At the same time, and Tonya, I agree with 100% of everything you just said. And I think it's important for people to recognize where they can get picked off pretty easily by regulations and regulators and auditors. I think at every single event I have ever gone to speak about hemp, I remind people not to be the low-hanging fruit. So do not make it easy for these regulators, for these auditors, for these different groups to come get you. So if you can very easily access the FDA and FTC warning letters online at the FDA website. And by going to those warning letters and reading them, you will see what people are getting in trouble for. And understanding what they get in trouble for, you can learn from their mistakes. Most of the time, if the FDA right now is coming after you, or the FTC is coming out after you, you probably made a claim or something's labeled wrong on your product. And so there are very easy ways to stay out of the spotlight, and understanding what those are really can come at no charge to you. Some of the harder things to get away from is the demand on the different tests the different states are requiring. So depending on where you sell and what products you sell, you need completely different testing done. And testing is not cheap. But, and no offense, Rend, in comparison to lawyers, tests are cheap. Sorry. So understanding the testing that you need, understanding who you can trust in this hemp world, understanding where your risks really are, really will help you stay out of the spotlight. And if you want to spend zero money understanding where your major risks are, I recommend going to the FDA website and finding those warning letters. I don't remember the date, but it was last year, and 15 warning letters went out on the same day to 15 different CBD companies. And if you read those letters, it's almost like they cut and pasted 15 times. So it's really easy to learn those specific rules. And just to plug the Hemp Authority, because we do have a certification seal, when people apply for the certification seal, we are looking for everything the regulators are. So understanding what we look for, and if you go to ushempaauthority.org, you can download our standards for free. They've been written in a way to help educate the hemp community on what needs to be done, what kind of standard operating procedures you need to have, what kind of testing you need to do, depending if you're a grower or a business owner or a manufacturer. And so understanding what's written there, mind you, it's an evolving hemp industry, and we don't cover every single state, but we do try to pull out what seems to be either the harshest rules or the most common rules.
And then Ron, from the perspective of a grower, what do you think are some of the most common regulatory or agency enforcement issues that are faced by your community?
Yeah, listening to my colleagues, the elephant in the room for farmers is FDA. And what's so frustrating as farmers is we know we have good land, we have the ability, and we want to teach the next generation and those that need help how to farm, just like the other generations taught us. there are so many products being sold on the shelves in our country that are not safe. And we want the FDA to move as quickly as they can to get those products off the shelf and then use our land in our country and grow hemp for the folks that want safe products. It is very frustrating, this weight on FDA. It's holding everything back from the Capitol. Almost everything we're mentioning, farmer, it's the weight on FDA. And until they get busy about doing something about it, the good news is you're blessed that you haven't started yet, because it's been pretty dangerous, and you can get hurt financially up till now. So, on the positive side, if we can all of us work together to help FDA get moving, then we can capitalize on that.
Amber, I was going to say that it would be great if all the new emerging companies that are coming up in the industry would self-regulate, that they would do the right thing, not make claims, they would not put unsafe products on the shelf, that they would, look at what other industries like the herbal industry or dietary supplement industry has done and borrow from those industries, because they're well established. They have a lot of guidelines that people can follow or look at and adhere to, and good management practices. They have, there's webinars and there's all kinds of ways in which companies can go about doing things the right way. But, unfortunately, a lot of times capital wins out.
Yeah, and I just wanted to jump in, and I might be jumping ahead to something that Amber was going to talk about, but just since we don't have much time left, I think these are all excellent points that are being made, and that there are free resources out there that can be utilized, especially from the trade associations. I'm so glad Tonya mentioned that. From the U.S. Hemp Authority, and some of the trade associations have so many great free resources to help you understand how various products are regulated, because there's different rules for different products. Mandatory good manufacturing practices for food and supplements that are slightly different. The claims that can be made for cosmetics are very different than the claims that can be made for supplements, and it seems very overwhelming. Even though I'm a lawyer, I'm here to tell you, you can at least get started without a lawyer and familiarize yourself with these resources, because when you are ready to, speak to a lawyer, it'll probably save you a lot of time if you know what questions to ask based on what you're able to learn from what's out there. So, for example, the American Herbal Products Association has guidance on contaminants, GMOs, botanical extracts, labeling, you name it, a wealth of resources. Some are members only, but there are quite a few of them that are free to the entire industry, whether or not you're a member. The Council for Responsible Nutrition, my former employer, they have a lot of great dietary supplement specific resources, summaries of the relevant FDA and FTC regulations we talked about. And one really good one, which is on the distinction between food and dietary supplements and how those are regulated differently. The agencies themselves, I think it was already discussed, FDA has a number of really easy to understand resources on cosmetics, food, and supplements that further explain the differences between how FDA views them. And FTC, the scary law enforcement agency we talked about, has a really great dietary supplement advertising guide that is useful across product categories. It gives really excellent advice on how to avoid making a misleading claim and the type of evidence that you need to support that claim. And again, it's very fact specific, but they break down what you need to consider so you can avoid making a deceptive claim and getting into trouble with that agency.
Thank you for that. My only 2 cents is claims. What's your claims? Make sure you understand what claims you can and can't make. And I know in your heart and soul, you so believe in this and the healing properties and what CBD and hemp can do, but please know what you can and cannot say. Because I'm sure every one of those letters that came out on that day started with claims. So anyways, we have very short time, so I want to try and get to a few of these questions. as we can. So again, I am overwhelmed at the amount of questions. I think that we will again work to get to all of the questions, hopefully offline. But what this lets us know is that we have a lot of opportunity to be able to continue engaging and continue providing this information. Let's see, let's get to, let's see, let us go. All right, so what's going to happen to hemp once cannabis is descheduled at the federal level? Will this have an impact on the industry? And do you think it will hurt the industry as far as the ability to kind of market? Would it be kind of risky? Will you still have the ability to market and sell hemp and CBD products once cannabis is legalized?
So if you guys don't mind me starting with this one, I actually think that there is plenty of room for both of us because although there are some things that are similar about hemp and high THC cannabis products, people are using them for very different reasons. They have very different designations depending on your state. They're also going to have different rules because most likely, for instance, in Canada, even though cannabis is legal, you still can't cross the provinces. And I don't know what's going to happen here. But the fact that hemp and cannabinoid products are mostly focused right now in dietary supplements, but will hopefully be easily added to food at some point in the near future, will keep it a very different crop, commodity, and product from the high THC cannabis that's used for medical and recreational purposes.
If you guys don't mind, I'm going to try and squeeze in two more questions, and because these are two topics we didn't really have much opportunity to cover. So this first one, what about somebody that's interested in R&D? How does somebody kind of jumpstart or break into research when it comes to this space? And I'm actually going to just look at you, Doctor.
So honestly, you can either find, there are a lot of new university programs opening up every day around cannabis, around hemp. I know I go out of my way to find food scientists when we are building things, and there are also hemp companies that are co-manufacturers, and all they do is make products and do product development. So if you are interested in the research side, such as working for a pharmaceutical company or at university funded research, that is one way to go. The other way to go is to keep studying. Most likely you need a biology, chemistry, or food scientist degree. Or you can get really lucky like I did and work your way up. So.
And then, again, I just managed to keep picking on you. Somebody was asking about the completely extraordinary cost of testing. And do you have any advice for how to manage the cost of testing for small businesses and keep those costs down if possible?
Sure. Part of this is going to be scary because if the cost looks like it's too good to be true, it probably is. Good testing is not cheap, but there are ways to work with your manufacturer or to work with your processor, such as Tonya, to try to keep the batch numbers lower. Because really when it comes to hemp, what you're testing are the batch and lot numbers. And the less lot numbers you have, the less testing you need to complete. And so understanding your risk, being able to lean on your manufacturer for some of it, and understanding what you really need to own, where your risk is, which most likely you might need some help from an attorney to understand your true risk level, will help you capture that. But if it's cheap testing, I'd run the other way.
I was going to say a good manufacturer will always do a full panel test on all of their incoming biomass in extraction all the way through the process. So I agree with you, Marielle.
And I'll just jump in to say having a good quality agreement with your contract manufacturer that covers these types of issues is also key if you're using a contract manufacturer. And it's your obligation under the law to do your due diligence with that.
I Alrighty, folks, we have reached the end here. We have so many questions in and out of the chat. Again, we will memorialize those, get to that, and also use that to help shape the next conversation that we have and look at how we as organizations and as a community can work to better provide you resources and to better create a network. I know that I saw some questions come in the chat about how do I create the relationships and how do I find the mentors and how do I, who do I connect to? And so again, the organizations represented on this call and the individuals represented on this panel are extraordinary pillars of this industry and have really shown a commitment both individually and through their organizations to support small businesses and to support really in particular also to support the folks, the minority industry in this space. So I just want to thank you, panelists today. I want to thank the US Hemp Roundtable for putting this event on, all of our partners. I have dropped some information in the chat. Again, one of our advocacy partners, the American Herbal Products Association, as Rend mentioned, is an absolute wealth of information when it comes to small businesses. So I encourage you to take a look at some of the resources there. And I definitely thank each and every one of you for coming here today and taking time out of your day. And we look forward to being able to engage with you and get to some of your questions moving forward. Again, thank you and have a great day. I've dropped my contact information in the chat, so feel free to reach out to me as well. And thank you.